two, one.
Hey guys, I just wanted to update my video why we choose Linux and just kind of tell you a little bit where I am in 2015 with it. I first started playing with Linux back in probably 2008, 2007. Published that first video in 2009. It's been some time now. I guess that's about 6 years. So back then, I think in the original video there was a lot of desktop shots, basically using kind of a tweaked Ubuntu interface. I might have had Conky going on there, but over time I've realized that I actually prefer working without a graphical user interface, which of course is gonna keep me on Linux because there's not much to, while you can operate in Windows in a command prompt view, there's not, it wasn't set up for that, wasn't designed for that. There are not too many people who know how to navigate with that, whereas Linux, your GUI or your graphical user interface, the point and click stuff, was always secondary to the command line. With most any instance of Linux, you should have a way to configure it not to start the X terminal, which is the graphical user interface. So I guess basically where I am now with Linux is here at the command prompt, which is what I'm showing you on my screen. I prefer it because I'm learning that I am kind of attaching myself to more of the server side of things, more to what computers can do for me outside of simple desktop applications, I should say, such as web servers, port scanners, network monitoring tools and such. And I just find the terminal is so much more responsive than bringing a graphical user interface into the mix. So I just kind of wanted to update you with where I am. For example, the server I'm in now, I find it a fantastic teaching tool for students that just kind of want to get in and kind of get some experience in working with the Linux command system. It's a great way to get started. You get great user controls, you can build users, groups, things that were with Linux from its inception that Windows has kind of played catch up on with its NTFS file structure, even though that came out with XP. They've had it for a while, but again, it was with Linux from its inception, user groups and all that sort of control. So when it comes to the real nuts and bolts of working within networks, setting up servers, I can't really get with Windows Server 2008. It's definitely not for me. The only reason the Windows desktop still hangs around for me is a little program called Sony Vegas that I cannot tear myself away from. I've not really pushed myself to learn Adobe products, but it's really irrelevant because unfortunately when it comes to Linux, it just doesn't seem like there's a whole large lot of video editors to choose from. So the Windows desktop is still going to be around for me. I'm a full GIMP user versus a Photoshop user, so Linux works for me on that. It just comes down to the video editing, guys. That's really the only reason that Windows is still around for me. If they port Vegas over to Linux, I will finally be able to cut the tie with this insufferable Windows 8 that keeps crashing probably at least once every 2 weeks. It's greatness. I very much thoroughly enjoy seeing the blue screens after a decade of updates. But nonetheless, that's my soapbox, that's my rant. I've had Linux machines, my Linux servers. I've got 3 of them sitting below my feet. They have been up and running. They don't crash. I lost a Pi server once, but that was due to user experimentation. Again, that's a server that I open up to my students, give them full access on because I just want them to learn. I want them to play. If they break it, it's no harm, no foul. It's easy to fix. So again, I just see myself partial to Linux. It's great for teaching, great for server implementation. So for those who are looking to switch from Windows to Linux, I don't know if I'd be the best teacher for that anymore outside of just recommending outside of just recommending perhaps Ubuntu or Mint, which are some great Linux distros that have some pretty solid desktop interfaces, so users that are coming from Windows won't be in too much unfamiliar territory. Again, I'm more of a terminal guy. I can't think of the last, well, it's probably been about a good 4 months since I booted up a Linux desktop. Anytime I get into Linux now, it's usually via SSH into a box, and there's nothing that I can do in a GUI that I can't do in a terminal. So I've just enjoyed that. Makes it easy. It makes people think like you know what you're doing when you're sitting there with the command line interface and just cranking away. So again, it's 6-7 years later. I'm still all for Linux. I love where it's going. I love seeing the things that are on the horizon for the open source community, and glad to be a part of it. So for those out there who want to switch teams, it's definitely a good choice. There may be some apps that have to get left behind, but Linux does have some good alternatives for your non-video editors, or for most of your but Linux does have some good alternatives for most of your applications. So, like I said, open source is the way to go. It definitely will save you a lot of money in the long run, and when you have a community of developers behind a good program, you get a good result. So again, still rocking the Penguin, and we'll talk to you next time.